with streamers. Biden's comments were brief. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, he said, and I'll see you on Thursday.
Fox's Mike Tobin. Thursday evening is when Joe Biden will offer his acceptance speech. Kamala Harris, his running mate, will speak on Wednesday. The woman who would be First Lady also spoke Tuesday evening.
Joe Biden closed night 2 of the DNC with a vivid description of her husband. She cited his example of working in the face of family tragedy as evidence that he has what it takes to lead the country through challenges.
The heart of this nation still beats with kindness and courage. That's the soul of America Joe Biden is fighting for now.
Joe Biden says the country can heal with her husband as president and Senator Kamala Harris as vice president.
That's Fox's Gernal Scott. President Trump continuing his campaign tour on Tuesday with stops in Iowa and in Arizona, where he accepted the endorsement of the National Border Patrol Council and claimed Joe Biden and the Democrats are soft on immigration.
The Biden plan would unleash a flood of illegal immigration like the world has never seen. It's crazy. Biden's plan is the most radical, extreme, reckless, dangerous, and deadly immigration plan ever put forward by a major party candidate. It must be defeated, and it will be defeated on November 3rd.
America is listening to Fox News.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Mezcla Dos opened its doors in 2010 and has been proudly serving the people of Guam for 10 amazing years. In celebration of their 10th anniversary, Mezcla Dos will be offering 20% off on all burgers for a limited time only. Terms and conditions apply. Please call them at 646-6295 for more information, or visit them at their Upper Tumon location right across Kmart. Thank you, Guam, for making Mezcla Dos one of your favorite hamburger spots.
Changes at the U.S. Postal Service on hold for now, amid threats of lawsuits from some states depending on the post office for mail-in voting.
President Trump in Arizona offering his solution to the money woes that continue to plague the U.S. Postal Service.
And we should raise the price of packages Amazon has to pay, and we shouldn't get rid of any of our postal workers. I don't want to get rid of our postal workers.
Earlier, Postmaster General Louis DeJoy said the Postal Service is suspending operational changes, such as removing mail processing equipment and collection boxes until after the November election. DeJoy also said the agency won't change retail hours at post offices across the country or close any mail sorting facilities. In Washington, John Decker, Fox News.
Notre Dame and Michigan State universities have become the latest colleges to move classes online because of the threat of the coronavirus. Ohio, which is letting school districts make their own reopening plans, will allow high school athletes to compete in fall sports. But as Governor Mike DeWine says, it'll be mostly in front of empty seats.
We will not have spectators other than family members or people very close to that particular child. And we'll leave that, of course, up to the school, how to do that.
Coronavirus hospitalizations and ICU admissions in Ohio are up. One of 2 men convicted in the murder of Michael Jordan's father in 1993 will be released from prison. North Carolina's Post-Release Supervision and Parole Commission announcing in a statement Tuesday it has granted parole to Larry Demery, but his release won't be until 3 years from now. James Jordan was killed during a robbery. Actor Ben Cross, who starred in the Oscar award-winning film Chariots of Fire and also played Spock's father on Star Trek, has died. He was 72. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified, serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
Hafadade, this is Carl from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future. Whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community, our dedicated team in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Woo-wee! Just take a gander at them tender and juicy fall-off-the-bone St. Louis ribs. Heavens to Betsy! What is their secret? It's bursting with so much flavor, I can eat them all day long. Come see for yourself, y'all. These fine slabs of hunky-dory, mouth-watering ribs are only available at Circle K. Circle K. Take it easy.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The right of the people to listen to and pay attention to tall tales shall not be infringed. Monday through Friday. Unfortunately, we can't do a Tall Tales on Saturday and Sunday, much as I'd like to, but we're here Monday through Friday. And if you want to call and chat with us here, project your voice over our international radio listening audience, 888-TALK, 888-8255. And you can also post on our Facebook page. We're streaming live with Facebook right now, so you can post on that page. Let's go straight to Zemi Ikotny. It looks like even the editorial writers are laying low because of the Wuhan virus. I have a really lackluster editorial from the Daily News. Of course, it's not homegrown. It's not about anything going on around here. It's just some boilerplate that they ran from somebody in Anderson, Indiana. And our Post editorial for today, teaching in public schools was challenging before COVID. Now it's tougher. Our teachers and families need support. So in 4 pages, the Post tells us that all kinds of really important things, that stuff that I know from my own personal experience. It's hard to be a teacher under the best of circumstances. These are not the best of circumstances. And here's a real telling one. Teachers have families too. And some kind of tips as to how to work with your teacher, make contact, etc. There's nothing here that's offensive or anything. There's nothing here that I agree with, but there's nothing here that I want to read either. It's a pretty bland offering for the editorial page of the Post. So maybe it's the Wuhan virus effect, that everything else seems to be kind of shut down. People are holding back. People don't want to do anything that they used to do before. People have become extremely timid. Maybe it has affected the editorial process. at the Post. Unfortunate, because the Post can write some really good editorials. They're up to 212 blue stars compared to only 57 for the Daily News. And I think it's going to be a long time before the Daily News gets another blue star. So let's go from there to the card. Thank you, Jose. Okay, well, on the card for today, Tina is up to 46 days. It's been 46 days since Tina detected an emergency situation that would affect the health or safety of the people of Guam to such a degree that she has found it necessary to call the legislature into special session and to waive public hearing requirements for bills coming before that special session. Now, perhaps this is the source of some of Sandra Seu's, or is it S-E-A-U? If I asked Frenchie how to pronounce that, I suspect Frenchie'd say so, because E-A-U in French is O.
Wasn't there a football player, last name Xiao pronounced? Somebody from the St. Austin.
Very possible. So, I think he was a Samoan, right?
Samoan
yeah.
Xiao. Yes.
Yeah, so I guess, well, I'll get to that in a second, because the first item on the card here ties right into Tina's lack of a sense of emergency. And it's Sandra, however her name is pronounced, versus Tina Rose Munya Barnes. So for want of a better pronunciation, I'm going to go with Xiao until someone comes along and corrects me, or until I can figure out something better myself. And next on the card, I've got racism versus Trump, McCloskeys versus the Democrat National Committee, Vince versus Government of Guam, Transparency versus the AG, Tall Tales versus CNN. This is the one that I still haven't gotten to explaining, so that I could explain to our international radio listening audience why the two people putting on this program today don't have cervixes. Never had cervixes, right?
Never had one either. So.
Yeah. I never even wanted one.
Never had one installed either.
Yeah. So, and then that ties in very nicely with the item right after it on the card, which is titled Him versus Them, which narrows it down quite a bit. Him versus them. And then I've got Brown versus Yale. So let's start out with Sandra. I'm just going to call her, let's be on a first name basis here. I'm just going to call her Sandra for the time being. And this is something that ran in front page on the Post today with a really nice picture. Candidate, where's the outrage over harassment allegations? So starting right, that's exactly what I said when I looked at that front page. Whoa. So starting right out, Sandra is, of course, a candidate for the legislature. So Sandra has at least one time in her campaign cracked the earned media nut. So earned media, for those of you in our international radio listening audience who aren't familiar with the term, there's earned media and paid media. Paid media is something that goes on TV, on the radio, and the newspaper, etc., like an ad that you have to pay for. That's paid media. Earned media means you get media coverage because what you have done is newsworthy, or at least someone thinks it's newsworthy. And when you say earned media, the way you measure that is if it's a newspaper story, you measure it by the column inch, because advertising and newspapers sells by two factors, the column inch and placement. If you're in the first 8 pages, it costs you more than after that. TV the same way. You pay by the minute, or actually half minute of the length of your commercial, and once again, placement counts. So when you get earned media, that means that you've gotten something that ordinarily you would have to pay for, but because you did something newsworthy, you didn't have to pay. Which of the two do you think is more effective, earned media or paid media? I'll give you a hint. It's earned media. People think there's a much more validity in the mention of what a candidate has done if it's something that's the candidate themself. I almost said herself. Caught myself in time.
That was almost.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah, the candidate themselves didn't have to pay for. So here's how it goes. Senatorial candidate Sandra Regis Seao has publicly called for an oversight hearing into separate harassment complaints at the Guam Customs and Quarantine Agency and at the AB Wanpat International Airport Authority. So she's not even in the legislature. And she said, we've got to have an oversight hearing. In response, Speaker Tina Rose Munya Barnes on Tuesday wrote to Seao that she has looked into the allegations and is waiting for the results of ongoing investigations. Now, put a marker here. Before I'm done, we're going to have to talk a little bit about separation of powers, what it is that the legislature does and what it is that the legislature doesn't do, or maybe doesn't do, but shouldn't do. Seao also wrote to Governor Lilian Guerrero about 2 alleged incidents. The governor responded in part by urging Seao to be cautious about accusations based on rumor and speculation. I am writing these concerns not as a private citizen, but as a victim of domestic violence myself, Seao wrote. As someone who has experienced a system which fails to protect victims on a consistent basis, I demand that the Guam legislature hold oversight hearings on these 2 agencies to determine, 1, what is taking place with these investigations, or even if the GIAA board conducted one, and 2, what is being done to protect all victims. So I got to stop here for a second. You know, we have 3 branches in our government. We have the executive branch, which is the governor. We have the legislature, the legislative branch, which is the legislature, and the judicial branch, the Supreme Court and the Superior Court. Each one of those branches has its own function. The legislature is the lawmaking branch. It actually has 3 functions: making laws, appropriating money, confirming executive appointments. The legislature is not sort of a grand jury without portfolio. It's not sort of the government's own investigative agency. Legislatures do hold oversight hearings, but the only defensible reason for a legislature to hold a hearing is to help it develop a factual foundation for necessary legislation to correct a problem. That's the reason we have legislative hearings. Now, I know the smart money over there, the guy in the lazy boy saying, oh, no, that's not what an oversight's for. It's to hold the governor accountable. That's why we have oversight hearings. Well, that may be the collateral effect, or what doctors would call the off-label use, but that's not the justification for an oversight hearing. It's to help to help senators develop an understanding of what problems are and what legislative solutions might be brought to those problems. So going back to the Seau demand, she says she wants to know what's taking place with these investigations. That's not the proper subject of a legislative hearing. She also wants to know what is being done to protect all victims. That is the proper subject of an oversight hearing. Again, I think that unless you're a Tall Tales listener, you might say, oh, wow, I didn't know that. I thought the reason we had oversight hearings was so that senators could call in members of the executive branch and give them a good scolding. I always thought that's the reason that we did that. Maybe that's what Sandra thinks too. The article goes on to say, I also recall, and then backing up a second here. Senator Tina Rose Munya Barnes wrote to Seau and said she has looked into the allegations and is waiting for the results of ongoing investigations. More about that later, about Senator Tina Rose Barnes looking into the allegations. Leon Guerrero wrote back to Seau saying every member of her cabinet was required to undergo ethics training and take a seminar on sexual harassment prior to taking office. Quote, as a woman, a mother, and a grandmother, I take any allegation of sexual harassment or impropriety by a member of my cabinet seriously, the governor said. As a leader, I must also be certain that any allegation against a cabinet member is thoroughly investigated. As leaders, we must not only act, we must act the right way. Presuming facts not in evidence and judging investigations before they are complete have cost our taxpayers millions of dollars in lawsuits and legal fees. Now there's something I didn't know, because I am unaware of anyone ever suing the government for something like slander or libel. And if that were the case, the government's liability is limited to $300,000 under the Claims Act. So where is, have we ever awarded Pinocchios here on Tall Tales? I don't think we have.
I know that's a new one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I'm not going to rush off and make a snap decision, but I'm going to investigate to see how many Pinocchios this statement is worth. Yeah, she says, presuming facts not in evidence and judging investigations before they are complete have cost our taxpayers millions of dollars in lawsuits and legal fees, and no one is served by that. Well, maybe when she says that, our taxpayers, everybody who lives in people have been sued and paid damages who were taxpayers. Maybe that's what she means. I can assure you that the female officer in question is protected, and that once all the facts are available, I will take appropriate action. Now, I think I know what appropriate action is. Although Janella is gone to public health, I think appropriate action is to call in Crystal Paco San Augustine, formerly known as Crystal Paco, and drill her so that she can say, we can't talk about that. That's a personnel matter. Whenever anyone asks, whatever happened to that sexual harassment, that harassment complaint at Customs in Quarantine. The governor also questioned Seau's motivations as a Republican candidate for senator. So when someone writes to a public official with a complaint, the appropriate response is to write back and scold the writer of that letter. That's everybody knows that. So here we go again. As a woman, a mother, and a grandmother, I take any allegation of sexual harassment or impropriety by a member of my cabinet seriously, the governor said. Wait a minute. Let me go on a little bit here. In cases such as this, we need to rely on the facts and the law, the governor stated. Any other course of action does not serve or protect women or anyone else in our community. And then Seo was critical of the silence related to the two alleged incidents. While there's an ongoing case being investigated by the Office of Attorney General, there is absolutely no outrage from the office of the governor or the Guam legislature. Okay, so let me see if I got this right then. If someone a government employee commits misconduct, and there is a potential criminal case pending before the Attorney General, that's not good enough. Both the governor and somebody in the legislature must express outrage. In fact, I think I could characterize the Seo complaint by saying, as far as she's concerned, the lack of outrage here is nothing short of outrageous. Yeah, she said there's no outrage from either the office of the governor or the Guam legislature into what has taken place by an individual who was appointed and confirmed by government leaders. So I don't know about the governor, but I suspect that Seo has a really good point as far as Tina is concerned, because we know what Tina is capable of, even with only the slightest provocation. That is, Tina will call the legislature into special session, emergency session, and she'll waive a public hearing on any bill. So the outrage should have been expressed in the form of a bill, so Tina could have expressed her outrage in that fashion. But she didn't, and Seo says it's not acceptable. Where is the oversight hearing from the Guam legislature in determining if this agency head should indeed continue in his capacity as a leader of an agency directed with protecting our borders? Well, once again, separation of powers. If there were an oversight hearing and the person who is alleged to have committed this misconduct comes to the oversight hearing and says, yep, I did it, I don't have any excuse, I'm guilty, the legislature should remove him, right? Because the legislature confirmed him. Wrong. So I don't know where we get these ideas. Where is the oversight hearing from the legislature in determining if this agency head should continue in his capacity as a leader of an agency? Well, if the oversight hearing determines that he shouldn't continue, that's not a legislative problem, not a legislative function. Seo stated, where is the concern for this female officer and questions from lawmakers on her safety? Yeah, well, I guess that gets back to Tina and calling the legislature into emergency session. Around mid-July, the Office of the Attorney General filed a criminal complaint against Guam Customs and Quarantine Agency Director Ignacio Paredo, who was arrested following an assault complaint. The AG's office said the court will review the complaint to decide whether misdemeanor charges are supported. Katlina Chatras, AG's spokeswoman, said the case has likely been stalled in court, along with others in the current shutdown. That's something else, you know, another outrage. It's like because of the Wuhan virus, nobody at the court wants to do anything. No ordinary business is being transacted. It's sort of like, Justice, oh, hold on, time out on that one. The speaker said, as the chairwoman on human resources, she must ensure that both the alleged victim and the alleged perpetrator be afforded their right to due process without any political influence. That's not what the chairman of human resources does. It's not your responsibility, Tina. You don't have anything to do with due process or political interference, except maybe not doing it yourself. Under the guise of a budget meeting, this is a confession, under the guise of a budget meeting. Now, a little vocabulary lesson here. Does the word guise sound familiar? Does that sound familiar to you, Jose?
It sounds, what is that word? It sounds hidden.
Yeah. Well, here's another.
Clandestine.
Yeah, something maybe our Carl might get engaged in. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, something clandestine, reserved only for the most dangerous man in the room. Yeah. But here's where you might have heard guise before. Do you recognize this word? Disguise. Uh-huh. I was going to go down to the legislature, but I was concerned that they might recognize me as the host of Tall Tales. So I put on a disguise. So here's Tina, under the guise of a budget meeting. In other words, under the pretense.
She tricked them.
Yeah, she tricked them. Under the guise of a budget meeting, I made sure I went to visit the Customs and Quarantine Agency.
Surprise.
Yeah, to do some investigative work myself. Wow.
She was under the guise of an inspector.
Yeah. So she did some investigative work herself. So I don't know, Carl, you got some competition out there. The most dangerous senator in the room, Tina Rose Munya Barnes. Yeah. So I went to the Customs and Quarantine Agency to do some investigative work myself. So I could see Tina waltzing into the Customs Agency shop there with her deerstalker hat on, like Sherlock Holmes. Yeah, and a magnifying glass in her hand, just kind of going around and looking at everything, and calling people, come over here.
This is a budget hearing.
Yeah. Under the guise of a budget meeting, not a hearing.
Meeting.
Yeah, I want to talk to you guys about your budget. So I'm going to come up this afternoon, and maybe I'll just walk around for a little while before the meeting, just to kind of familiarize myself with the shop. Yeah, so Tina went there under the guise of a budget meeting to do her own investigative work. When I went there, I saw firsthand the professionalism of the men and women who put their lives on the line to keep our borders safe. Yeah, it's time to take a break. After that, I need a break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon, or call 646-1463.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So, Sandra Sale, here's a little lesson in media relations. When you're talking with members of the media and they're reporting on what you say, conventional wisdom holds that you talk in sound bites, that you use short, punchy sentences that will make really good quotes when someone pulls them out of a interview or a news story. Here's a classic example of a really good soundbite. When I went there, I saw firsthand the professionalism of those men and women who put their lives on the line to keep our borders safe. That is kind of a oblique way of saying, you guys up there at Customs, can you remember me on Election Day? Because I said nice things about you. More of the Tina Rosemunia Barnes quote. My concern and investigation into alleged abuse of women within the airport also followed the same rationale. I reached out. Oh, she reached out. I reached out to relevant stakeholders who have informed me that the process is taking its course and an investigation is being conducted. So Tina, Tina went up to the airport and reached out to relevant stakeholders. So Tina did, I guess, quite an investigation. I wonder if she'll do an report of an ROI report of investigation. I wonder if I sent a Sunshine Law request if I could get a copy of it. But Tina, this is not your job. Going to the airport, to Customs under the guise of a budget discussion so you can conduct your own investigation. You know, go online and buy some old episodes of Perry Mason or something like that to satisfy your urge to be some kind of an investigator. Okay, back to the article. Seo noted that former GIA executive manager Tom Atta had resigned abruptly in June, and that on the night of Atta's resignation, the governor's office would only say they support his commitment to his family. The Guam Daily Post has sent a Freedom of Information Act request for any documents related to an investigation into Atta after his resignation. The airport responded, it does not release information on personnel matters.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah. They do not release information on personnel matters. On Tuesday, neither GIAA nor ATA responded to requests for comment. Barnes said, while Seo's letter lacks some facts, I think the point you are making is that you are frustrated that when we are told, quote, the process is ongoing, close quote, it takes forever. If that's your concern, let me be the first to tell you that I wholeheartedly agree with you, Barnes said, as she returned from her own investigation at the customs agency. This is a really interesting story. I have a suggestion. You know, we used to, I think the curriculum has changed now, but in 9th grade, there used to be a civics course. And in civics, you learn what the legislative branch did, what the executive branch did, what the judicial branch did. Maybe it's time that anybody who is elected to public office be given a 9th grade civics textbook if we can find any, so they could kind of bone up on what it is that their branch does, and more importantly, as in the Sherlock Holmes mystery, more importantly, what they don't do.
What they don't do.
Anytime you hear Sherlock Holmes, Jose.
Someone press my pause button.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, the real Joe Cruz, whenever he started talking about Sherlock Holmes, all I had to do was look over at him and I'd say, what did so-and-so do? And the real Joe Cruz would say,
it's not what they did, it's what they didn't do.
They didn't do, yeah.
I recall that now.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to racism versus Trump. Now, some people were exposed to these statements and asked for their reaction to these statements. First statement: unless we do something about this, my children are going to grow up in a jungle, the jungle being a racial jungle, with tensions having built up so high that it's going to explode at some point. Next statement: poor kids are just as bright as white kids. Next statement: Obama is the first mainstream African American who is articulate and bright and clean. And next statement: unlike the African American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is incredibly diverse and with incredibly different attitudes about different things. In response, one voter said, "It's so racist and ignorant in every way. It's like Trump has never interacted with a black person or anybody else for that matter." Another voter responded that such comments are unacceptable. Well, there's a little guys here too, because it wasn't Trump that said those things. It was Joe Biden who said that. Yeah. It was Joe Biden. Now, this article that I found on The Blaze goes on to say, despite declaring that people with such beliefs should not be president, the voters justified voting for Biden in November after learning that Biden, not Trump, was responsible for the racist statements. And here are some quotes from these people that, you know, opened their mouths and inserted foot. Joe Biden is problematic as hell, but like we all know that he's not had a great past, but he's the option we need. And I think if we were to look at the whole person, that just like the 2016 election, Joe Biden is still a better choice. And it doesn't make any of this okay, but I will still choose Biden over Trump. And honestly, we're picking our poison here, and clearly Biden is the better option. We're picking our poison, and Biden is a better option. And it's the more progressive, the more progressive and tolerant option. One woman even said that to some degree it does not matter what Biden says or does. The number one priority for the election should be voting Trump out of office. Unfortunately, that's super fouled. I'm changing a word here. Super fouled up to say, and I know that you're pointing that out in a really powerful way, but I'm just so not going to vote for Trump. The woman told Miller, I'm going to vote, so who am I going to vote for? I'm going to have to be Biden. Yeah. So, you know, with all this talk floating around about whether or not we have systemic racism in this country, you listen to something like this. It's not that we have systemic racism, we have systemic stupidity. That people would push aside obviously racist statements from an obviously racist person because they think it's going to better, it will be better for them personally. Nice. Okay, so next item on the card here is McCloskey's appearance. As you were, McCloskey versus the Democrat National Committee. And this is from an article in Bearing Arms. I should have probably done this right after the Second Amendment, but I didn't. And I've labeled it McCloskey versus the Democrat National Committee because the title of the article is McCloskey's appearance at the Republican National Convention puts Biden-Harris gun control agenda in spotlight. Now, you remember the McCloskeys from St. Louis, and I don't know if this article gets into it, but they were lefties. They were not conservatives. They were not Republicans. They were Democrats. And I guess they found out what it really means to be a Democrat. Mark and Patricia McCloskey, the St. Louis couple facing felony charges for pointing their firearms at protesters after they damaged a gate and entered the couple's private community back in June, will be featured at next week's Republican National Convention. The news, according to sources who broke the news during the first evening of the Democrat National Convention. The news helped to distract from the first night of the DNC, which wasn't hard, frankly. The evening featured a lot of pre-taped speeches, blame casting from New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, and whatever the hell this was supposed to be. I'm not sure when an RNC last featured someone facing felony charges, but then again, that's part of the draw for Republicans and the Trump campaign in highlighting the couple. The message sent by the McCloskey's appearance is simple. Democrats want to ban your guns and prevent you from defending yourself and your family, and they'll try to destroy you for exercising your Second Amendment rights. In fact, it looks like the RNC will feature several individuals who've been targets of the cancellation by the left. In addition to McCloskey's, Covington Catholic student Nick Sandmann, who recently settled a multi-million-dollar defamation suit filed against CNN, will also be speaking, according to Republican officials. Nick Sandmann was the guy who went to that March for Life in Washington with some other kids from Covington Catholic School. And they were minding their own business when a group of African Americans calling themselves the Black Israelites started to taunt them. So the Catholic kids just started singing their school song. And this Native American man, whose name I can't quite remember right now, came over and stood in front of Sandman and held a drum about 6 inches from his face, a tom-tom, I suppose, and started beating it. These kids behaved themselves perfectly well, but the way CNN edited the film and the way they reported on it, it looked like these kids were really bad kids. Sandman filed suit, CNN settled. Now he's going to be speaking at the Republican National Convention. It's a really good contrast kind of between us and them. The McCloskeys aren't exactly the perfect surrogates for the Second Amendment, but given the high profile of their case and the natural tie-in to Donald Trump's law and order campaign, it makes sense that they would be featured as an example of what can happen to average people who try to exercise their right to keep and bear arms when Democrats are in charge. The McCloskeys believe they were protecting their home from threats, and in return, St. Louis Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner decided to make an example of them. Ordinarily, it might not be the best idea for a criminal defendant to take a high-profile speaking gig at the Republican National Convention while their case is still ongoing. But this isn't exactly an ordinary prosecution. Gardner's already offered to allow the McCluskeys to enter into a diversion program that would keep them out of prison. But Missouri Governor Brad Parson has already said he'll pardon the couple if they're convicted. And the state's attorney general has filed a motion to intervene in the case in order to drop the charges completely. In other words, the case is already a political circus. The couple appearing center stage at the RNC will most likely enrage the left. Well, let's hope so. It's not going to hurt the McCluskeys' chances in court of law and will hopefully serve as a reminder that if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris end up in the White House, the attacks on the McCluskeys will be just a preview of the broader war on legal gun owners that Democrats are planning to wage in 2021. All right, I got that big halftime show coming up in 10 minutes. In the meantime, I've got the most dangerous man in the room, in the green room right now.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you wear a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific Rosebud branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Agagna location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
Okay, so here we are back on Tall Tales, and I suspect that our Carl, also known as the most dangerous man in the room, really tuned in and paid close attention to a rival investigator, Tina Rose Munya Barnes. Janice Wong, by the way, suggests that maybe Tina Rose Barnes should get a hold of some Agatha Christie novels. Might help her sharpen her investigative techniques. Okay, so with no further ado, we'll now turn to the most dangerous man in the room, R. Carl. Hello, R. Carl.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. Yeah, I was feeling kind of threatened by that she's like kind of straying into my lane there, you know, the most dangerous man lane. There's only, I don't know how much space we've got on islands. A small island, you know, how many most dangerous can we have on island?
Well, competition brings out the best in everyone, R. Carl.
That's true. That's very true. Just a couple of comments. One of them about Nick Sandmann. You know, he, from what I understand, he hired a really extremely competent pit bull of a lawyer who is used to these kind of lawsuits, and they've only, I think they've gone through one or two of the, I think it's something like 20 major news outlets that they've sued. So by the time this is over, I have a funny feeling Nick Sandmann won't need to worry about where he's going to get money for college. He'll probably be able to buy his own college. I was thinking it would be very appropriate for him to actually start a school. I think it would be great if he'd start the Nick Sandmann School of Journalistic Ethics. That'd be very appropriate.
It really would. Yeah, and you know, whenever I think about his name, I think of these sleep we got a couple of clinics that do sleep studies. Did you know that, Carl?
Yeah.
You go in there and they hook you up with all kinds of wires and stuff, and then somehow you're supposed to go to sleep. I don't know how that would ever happen. But I've never done it. I've known people that have done it, and they say it's really hard to go to sleep. So how would this work? Sandman's Sleep Study Clinic.
Oh, that's another good idea.
Yeah, you know.
You need to send him these ideas.
Yeah, you remember when you were a kid and your mother said, "It's time to hit the sack, Carl. Sandman's coming."
Very true.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add in one really great quote. It's by Michael Knowles. I believe Michael Knowles is from The Wire, or one of those news outlets on the right. And he was being interviewed on the Rubin Report, which is a very popular report or interview show on YouTube. And it's a great quote. It's not very long. Said, "We've been told for the past few weeks that all of the protests are about institutional racism, but then it occurred to me, the left controls every major institution in America. It controls the media, it controls higher education and lower education, it controls Hollywood, it controls big tech,
most of the big cities,
administrative government. Other than talk radio and some little parts of the internet, it controls every institution. So if there's institutional racism, whose fault is it?"
Good point, Carl.
And also, just one quick thing, you know, there's a lot of protests about the conditions, you know, in the inner cities, but there's over 24 failing inner cities across America, you know, in Baltimore and St. Louis and Chicago, et cetera, et cetera. All of those, every single one of them, those over 24 failing inner cities have been controlled by the left for over 50 to 100 years. So if they want to complain about institutional racism, I think they need to contact the DNC and maybe get some restitution, some reparations from the DNC.
Good point, Carl.
Anyway, Bob, that's my 2 bits for now. I'm going to be heading out, but I will continue listening.
Okay, Carl, good talking to you.
All right.
Probably going on some secret mission, right?
Oh, absolutely. Super secret.
Yeah.
If I told you, I'd have to kill you.
Yeah, I won't put you on the spot. Thanks, Carl. Most dangerous man in the room. Okay, and then next on the card, I've got Vince Akimoto versus the government of Guam. Vince says, "I don't think that the JIC or Gov Guam as a whole is malicious. This lockdown is not because people didn't wash their hands. The lockdown is because GMH doesn't have enough nurses or doctors to care for all the critically sick people that need them. The lockdown is because the government of Guam's hospital is failing. I know that our non-essential government employees intend to do a good job. Too many of them are in over their heads and allowed to fail. There has been little accountability for GovGuam incompetence at GMH or at public health. Poor performing political appointees get paid no matter how much they screw up." Yeah, well, we'll come back to Vince right after that big halftime show.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait.
Democrats pick their nominee. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News.
His strength of will is unstoppable, and his faith is unshakable.
Dr. Jill Biden speaking to the virtual Democrat National Convention last night, minutes after they formally nominated her husband as its presidential candidate.
For all of you out there across the country, just think of your favorite educator who gave you the confidence to believe in yourself. That's the kind of first lady this Jill Biden will be. God love you.
Biden will give his acceptance speech tomorrow night. Tonight, Senator Kamala Harris will accept the vice presidential nomination. Two former Democrat presidents spoke via pre-recorded messages on Tuesday, Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter.
In these uncertain times, Joe Biden realizes that many American lives can be saved each day through the use of masks and testing as recommended by our medical experts. Joe Biden must be our next president.
President Carter is now 95. Fox News Radio's Democracy 2020 coverage of the Democratic National Convention live starting tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. Download the Fox News app, then click Listen to hear it live. Back on the campaign trail Tuesday, President Trump with appearances in Iowa and Arizona, telling a gathering in Yuma.
I never thought I'd say anything could compete with 2016. This election that we're going into is the most important election in the history of our country.
The president accepted the endorsement of a group representing Border Patrol agents and claimed by next week 300 miles of border wall on the southern border will have been completed. A record day on Wall Street Tuesday, while the Dow closed 66 points lower. The S&P 500 gained 8 points for its highest closing ever. NASDAQ added 81 points. Asian stock markets closing Wednesday mixed. Dow futures modestly higher. American is listening to Fox News.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
America is listening wherever you are, on radio and podcasts. Trending the stories you need anytime you want online. And Fox Nation, streaming the entertainment that celebrates America. Fox News Media, America's News, and much more. The Fox News Rundown is a weekday morning podcast that dives deep into the major and controversial stories of the day. Hosted by the anchors of Fox News Radio. Subscribe now to hear a perspective of news you won't find anywhere else. Listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
The final report of the Senate Intelligence Committee on the subject says Russia clearly tried to interfere in the 2016 presidential election, and says acting committee chair Senator Marco Rubio.
We found absolutely no evidence whatsoever that Donald Trump or his campaign colluded with Russia to meddle in our elections.
The committee also blasting the FBI for its reliance on the unverified Steele dossier in its probe of Russian election interference. Americans dramatically misunderstand the risk of death they face from the coronavirus. According to researchers with the Franklin Templeton Gallup Research Project, respondents estimate that people under 44 account for 30% of the U.S. deaths blamed on the virus. The actual number is less than 3%. The number of reported infections worldwide since the outbreak started now exceeds 22 million. Portland, another night of protests declared by police to be a riot and dispersed. The driver who was pulled from his truck and beaten unconscious in Portland on Sunday has now been released from the hospital. Police say they know the name of one of his attackers and they are looking for him. 3 more people have been charged with the looting spree in Chicago 10 days ago, including a woman who was out on bond from an earlier looting arrest.
Prosecutors say that woman, a mother of 4, was nabbed after she tried to sell boots worth $1,400 online. But they say what she didn't know was that she was speaking with undercover officers. She and her boyfriend both arrested when they went to a McDonald's restaurant to hand the boots over to the buyer. The owner of the store where the boots were taken says damages to his business totaled about $1 million. The woman, Gabrielle McGriff, had just appeared in court last week, charged with looting a downtown Macy's. Gary Baumgarten, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumont. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Half a day. This is Michelle from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are, the big halftime show on Tall Tales, the greatest show on the island every day at 1700. We are now in the second half of Tall Tales, which means that we have crossed the line into the second half of this week, and that means that we've only got a couple more days of Tall Tales left after this, and then we got to tough it out over the weekend. So I left off with Vince Akimoto versus the government of Guam, so that's where I'll start. Vince says there has been little accountability for GovGuam incompetence at GMH or Public Health. Poor performing political appointees get paid no matter how much they screw up. The virus is the new normal. The virus doesn't care what excuses there have been for GovGuam malfeasance. The virus wants to kill us. You put it in those terms. I had a piece that ran in yesterday's Post by Vince that I skipped yesterday, deliberately hanging on to it till today, and I'm going to spend a little time with that one now. It's about how you break bad news, and when is it not kind to be kind, I guess I could phrase it that way. And Vince gives us an autobiographical experience. I was called at 3 a.m. to respond to an 11-year-old oncology patient with spiking high fevers. I was a second-year resident physician on hospital night call for the pediatric team at the world-famous Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. I hurried into the patient's room to find his mom, his grandmother, and his older brother all awake by the sick boy's bedside. His dad was sitting on the bed, soothing his son's forehead. I explained that the boy's white blood cell count was too low, and several important tests needed to be done immediately. Understandably, the thin, pale boy wondered aloud why all this had to be done right now. He just wanted to go home. The snow fell quietly outside in the large windows in the boys' near the boys' bed. I guess this must have been in June, huh? Minnesota?
No snow?
June?
June?
Yeah. It says the snow fell quietly outside. Yeah, they only have 2 seasons in Minnesota, Jose.
Ice and snow?
No, winter and the 4th of July.
Yay.
Yeah. But it's an interesting. You know what the state bird of Minnesota is?
No, I don't.
It's the mosquito. It's a real garden spot, Minnesota. Yeah. The only thing Minnesota's got going for it, it's right next to Wisconsin. You have a lot of people, a lot of people swimming the Mississippi to get into Wisconsin.
Where is it that you hail from?
Wisconsin.
There you go.
Yeah. The snow fell quietly outside the large windows near the boy's bed while I explained that he was still very sick and we wanted to safely treat his cancer before we could send him home. His father's face turned red with rage. He instructed me to walk with him outside the room. With utmost self-control, the broken-hearted father who served as the church pastor in a farm town several hundred miles away told me that I was an idiot for telling his son that he had cancer. The family had decided that they wanted to keep that bad news from the patient. I felt miserable for unveiling the terrible secret, but it was the truth. Lambasted, reviled, and contemned, healthcare professionals and government leaders are subject to psychological, emotional, and too often physical violence when dealing with intimate life or death truths like the Wuhan virus pandemic. Last week, Governor Lulian Guerrero, a former intensive care unit nurse, ordered Guam back into pandemic condition of readiness, POS 1, due to the emerging threat of critically ill patients overwhelming the island's poorly maintained government hospital. Infuriated small business owners berated the governor's treatment of unemployed private taxpayers who have gone months without meaningful local assistance. Incensed, desperate citizens vilified the governor for perpetrating the idiocy of simultaneously coddling 5,000 non-essential government workers who have been continuously paid to stay home for the past 6 months. The Guam Chamber of Commerce called for a more balanced approach to the new pandemic surge. Local business experts argued passionately for the avoidance of a devastating, massive island-wide shutdown because they believed that Guam had done a good job of controlling the virus. They noted that Guam's rate of infection had been among the best in the nation as recently as last month. The Chamber of Commerce impressively cited data released by Guam's Joint Information Center that suggested that we had robust contact tracing and minimal hospitalization ICU utilization. Despite warnings from the National Centers for Disease Control that Guam's hospital resources were not safe for travelers, the Guam Chamber praised Public Health and Guam Memorial for being more than up to the task of keeping the economy open. They were wrong. The governor's press secretary and the Joint Information Center had decided they wanted to keep the bad news from the patient. The governor's press secretary, that would be Crystal Paco San Augustine, formerly known as Crystal Paco. The governor's press secretary and the Joint Information Center had decided they wanted to keep that bad news from the patient. The miserable secret was that the cancer of payroll politics had made GMH unsafe for travelers and for the people of Guam. The terrible truth was that public health had too few real contact tracers, and most of these were so-called medical detectives. I wonder if that was Tina Rose Munya Barnes. So-called medical detectives were lazy political appointees who just wanted the lucrative $20 per hour paycheck. Like the movie Poltergeist, Gov Guam had just removed the tombstones in the cemetery, but they didn't remove the dead bodies. Across the nation, bad politics is feeding the virus. Elected officials at the highest levels, including President Donald Trump, have lied about the pandemic, used misinformation as a weapon, and hostilely attacked public health experts who tell the truth, as painful as it might be. Hopefully, we on Guam are better than that. Hopefully, we can find a way through the pandemic by being humble and kind. We have to be good to each other, make GMH stronger and free from political patronage, and develop truly robust contact tracing and public health. We have little choice but to do better, because this virus is put your fingers over your ears, Jose, because this virus is a bitch. So, so the terrible truth is that the cancer at payroll politics had made GMH unsafe for travelers and the people of Guam. The terrible truth was that public health had too few real contact tracers. So instead of telling us the truth, what the governor did was say, well, because there are more positive tests, we've got to go back to POS 1. An interesting take on that one, Vince. Okay, next on the card, a little good news for a change. This is transparency versus the Attorney General. And this is a story that ran in the PDN a couple days ago. A judge this week ordered Attorney General Levin Camacho to disclose any and all communication among his employees concerning pay as a part of a Freedom of Information Act request. Attorney Thomas Fisher, who is representing a police officer, challenged the government of Guam's decision not to pay essential government employees double pay, has stated in a Department of Administration rule, took Camacho to court over his denied FOIA request, which didn't have anything to do with the police officer's case, by the way. Here's a quote from Fisher. It's disappointing that these government officials proclaim accountability and transparency, and they say it with a straight face, too. Yet when put to the task of providing public records, these same officials find every which way to withhold information. Under no circumstances is it ever okay to withhold public records. It's just wrong. And it's about time the people of Guam collectively tackled these possibly very corrupt acts. So I got a phone call here. It might be, did you open the Jimmy line today?
I don't know where. Yeah, it's open.
Yeah, because if it's Jimmy, Jimmy has a pay-as-you-go phone, so I don't want to keep him waiting too long. It's Al and not Jimmy, but it's okay. Good afternoon, Al.
Oh, buddy. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
All right, well, I just got a few things to get off my mind. I mean, a long time ago, there was a saying, and I really do truly miss the saying, and it goes something like this: a government of the people, for the people, by the people.
Yeah, that sounds like something Abraham Lincoln would say.
But today, it seems that it's the people, for the people, by the people, all for the government. Now, it never ceases to amaze me that in today's day and age, how we have really sloped the wayside of democracy and freedom, okay? And to put it into perspective, okay, I grew up, along with you, Senator Klitzkie, right? We had SARS, we had H1N1, we had the flesh-eating bacteria, we had AIDS, HIV, we had bird flu, mad cow disease, Ebola, right? All the terrible things in the world, and none created the effect that this thing has created today, okay? And it's amazing how the people will let the government, okay, take care of our health, but yet when it came to the government violating our civil rights, our freedoms today, we don't care about it. But the moment the government says, hey, we're doing this for your health, we're going to listen to you. Now, that's absolutely ridiculous. You mean to tell me that every time this darn thing's going to spike, we are going to shut down the world, we're going to shut down the living, okay? Senator Klitzkie, I think, everybody forgot, okay, the inoculation or immunization to this whole COVID-19, all right, it's too far down the road. And you know what? There's something that all of us has that was given to us at birth, right? And it is probably one of the greatest defenses that our body has. It's called the immune system, right? Now, the more that we continue to sanitize, scrub, and try to eradicate all the germaphobe things in this world, we weaken our immune systems, okay? If that was ever the case, then it's amazing that you and I are alive today because of the day and age that we grew up in, right? So I just wonder, when are the people going to realize that the government is there to protect our rights, not our health? We have doctors for that. But yet, we're letting the government take over our health and our freedoms and tell us when we can and can't do business or what we can and can't do regarding our health. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, keep that in mind. Just a positive note. Hey, it's a sunny day. It's a beautiful day on our beautiful island. And, hey, be safe, everybody. Take care.
Nice call, Al. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us today. Okay, so that's Al. And he makes some really good points. I can't help but think we've really overreacted to the Wuhan virus. And as Vince points out, what's really going on here is that our hospital can't handle the increased demand caused by this sickness. But this shouldn't surprise anybody. Our hospital has been a disaster ever since. Everybody talks about fixing it. Nobody ever does anything. And then when we run into emergent circumstances, according to Vince here, we're not telling the patient what the diagnosis really is. We're telling them something else. Not a good sign at all. Okay, so back to transparency in the AG. I was reading some quotes from Attorney Tom Fisher, who sued the Attorney General. Fisher asked for communications between and among employees of the Attorney General's office related to payment of Government of Guam employees. He also asked for communications between the AG's office and the Governor's office related to payment of Government of Guam employees. Camacho largely denied Fisher's FOIA request for a few reasons, including exceptions for pending litigation and attorney-client privilege, court documents stated. Camacho did disclose several pages of WhatsApp chat excerpts. Superior Court of Guam Judge Elise Ariarte on Wednesday ordered the communications between the Office of the AG regarding internal employee payments to be disclosed to Fisher. Responsive communications concerning public business transmitted over personal devices cannot be shielded from disclosure, Ariarte wrote in her decision. Now, this may not sound that is important, but it is. It's super important. So what it means is that WhatsApps between government employees using their phones, if they are actually dealing with government business have created public documents in that WhatsApp chain. And if a properly worded Sunshine Law demand is made, that those chats have to be turned over to the requester. If you stop to think about it, it's the way it should be, because unscrupulous board members, as an example, if there are such things, know that they're not supposed to have clandestine meetings. All their meetings are supposed to be, of course, the governor has screwed that up too with her executive order, but putting that aside, meetings of boards and commissions are supposed to be properly noticed and held in public. And there are not supposed to be any decisions made outside of those board meetings. But, you know, if you had a WhatsApp chat room, you could settle it all before the meeting ever started, couldn't you? Well, that's going to be a little more difficult thanks to Tom Fisher, because I would suspect that from now on there will be a routine request for WhatsApp chats and Instagram and whatever else would work the same way. So this is a real victory for the tax-paying public here. Responsive communications concerning public business transmitted over personal devices cannot be shielded from disclosure. As for communications between the AG's office and the governor's office, Iriarte wrote that she couldn't determine if attorney-client privilege applies and needs more information from Camacho. Iriarte said Camacho needs to submit an affidavit and an index within 10 days for her to review before deciding if attorney-client privilege applies. A privilege log, in other words. We appreciate the diligence of the court while working through this lawsuit, and we will file requested documents, the AG said. And finally, from Fisher, a public document is created when conducting government business on WhatsApp or similar forms of communications, and that public document is subject to the Sunshine Law. One may easily arrive to the conclusion that conducting government business on WhatsApp or similar forms of communication may be akin to meeting in secret. Just like what I said, transparency should never be a choice for any government official. Well, let's give Tom Fisher a big round of applause. Yeah, good job, Tom Fisher. Did you got something? You have something?
Yeah, I have a question about transparency and representation.
Okay.
And this is just my, I don't want to say ill-informed, just uninformed mind here. The Attorney General on Guam is elected by the people, and the governor is elected by the people. How would you explain who represents who and who is the client? And are we privy to any communications between the AG and the governor?
Well, I'll give you a real lawyer-like answer here, all right? You ready for this? Well, it depends.
That's the confusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the Attorney General is the chief legal officer for the government of Guam. The governor is the chief executive. In fact, the whole executive branch is the governor, people and her deputies and assistants. So certainly the Attorney General represents the governor. So most communications between the governor and the Attorney General dealing with government business are arguably privileged. Now, if it's the Attorney General who sends a communication to the governor saying, are you going to shut down the government the day after Thanksgiving this year? I want to know because I want to make plans. Probably not privileged. Okay. But if it's something dealing with pending litigation or any kind of a deliberative process involving what legal tack the governor should take? Probably privileged. Now, our statute also says that the Attorney General has the common law powers of an Attorney General, which means that he can do things like challenge a facially unconstitutional statute or take actions in the, quote, public interest, whatever that means. And then, of course, the way we're set up, the chief prosecutor is under the control of the governor. So when the governor or a member of the executive branch commits a crime, it's not a matter of privilege. It's a matter that it's a matter of prosecutorial discretion as to what the Attorney General tells the governor, what, if anything, at all. So I hope that answered your question, Jose.
It pointed right to your first answer. It depends.
Yeah.
It depends.
All right. Well, we have these law and order moments here on Tall Tales from time to time. 7th. There you go. Okay, so next I've got Tall Tales versus CNN. Yeah. Let's take a break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you wear a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific grows but branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Seventh inning stretch coming to you from scenic Wrigley Field, historic Wrigley Field on the near north side of Chicago. No game today. So we go from Wrigley Field right back to the heroic, historic studios of The Point in Upper Tumum. And at long last, I've got this Fox News article about people with and without cervixes. And I know you've been waiting for this one, Jose.
All hour.
Yeah. So the title of the article is Twitter Users Mock CNN over story on cancer screening for individuals with a cervix. So CNN had this story about cervical cancer, but they pointed the story to individuals with a cervix.
They,
yeah. And it starts out with a line from, I can't remember what group did this song, it's an old 1960 song, When a Man Loves a Woman. You remember that one? You remember who the artist was?
I'm going to take a wild guess, Percy Sledge?
I think you're right, yeah. So that song has been rewritten. when a man loves an individual with a cervix.
That's incredibly romantic.
It is. Yeah, so Trump slams dishonest CNN. President Trump accuses, let me get back down to it here. CNN has received brutal mockery on Twitter after tweeting a story on Thursday about a recommended cervical cancer screenings for individuals with a cervix rather than women. Now, of course, you know where this is going, right?
Yeah.
A man could have a cervix, right?
Can,
yes.
but that's not legal.
Well, you see, if you were hung up on the binary definitions of gender, you might make a mistake about who has a cervix and who doesn't have a cervix. And in some places, you can really get in trouble for misgendering a person, for calling a man, for someone who thinks he's a man, to call that person a woman. That's misgendering.
Oh, okay.
So CNN is just showing us how woke they are. So they're not talking about cancer screenings for women. They're talking about cancer screenings for individuals with cervixes. Okay. Because there could be people who are women that don't have a cervix.
Oh.
And there could be men who do have cervixes under the new rules.
Okay.
The outlet's phrasing was similar to that of the American Cancer Society, which issued a guideline urging people with a cervix to start screening at 25 years of age. You know, if I didn't know better, if I didn't know a little bit about the female anatomy, I'd think that a cervix, I'd think that a cervix was some kind of high-priced European automobile. I saw him driving down the street in a cervix. Man, that was cool.
I keep mine in my garage.
Your cervix.
My cervix.
CNN's story on the guidelines touched on an already raging debate surrounding the biological basis for gender. Earlier this month, Pink News touted a United Kingdom cancer charity that pushed back on what the outlet described as the disgustingly transphobic lie that only females get cervical cancer. What a disgustingly transphobic lie that was, that only females get cervical cancer. One of the CNN story's paragraphs suggested that Pap tests and hysterectomies knew no gender.
I'm finding it hard to believe.
Yeah. So I don't want to, but I guess if I really wanted to, I could have a hysterectomy. Individuals who are 65 and older and have had an adequate negative result in prior screening can stop getting screened, the article said. Those with a hysterectomy can also discontinue screening after 2 consecutive negative HPV tests, 2 negative co-tests, or 3 negative Pap tests done within the past 10 years, with the most recent having occurred in the past 3 to 5 years. Many Twitter users pointed out that the outlet was ignoring a fundamental reality of human biology. Because I fit in the over 65, but I could never pass the rest of that test. Biology must be hard for CNN, Students for Life of America President Kristen Hawkins tweeted. In another tweet, she asks, "You mean women? Only women can have a cervix." And then there's a rebuttal. Women. They are women. And CNN, just because you self-identify as a news channel doesn't make you one, UK politician Peter Whittle tweeted. Fox News contributor Molly Hemingway took aim at CNN's, quote, Facts First campaign, which uses fruit to make its point. And then the ACLU claims men who get pregnant and give birth are men. A man who gets pregnant and gives birth is a man. That's another article. How do I find out if I have a cervix? Tweeted Stephen Pollard of the Jewish Chronicle. Do I need a scan? Or is there some sort of general concept that identifies individuals with a cervix? Others piled on by toying with song lyrics mentioning women. You're once, twice, 3 times an individual with a cervix. However, some defended the outlet, suggesting that the phrasing was appropriate. On Friday, CNN's head of strategic communications defended his outlet. He suggested that critics took issue with the outlet's attempt at, are you ready for this now? The head of CNN Strategic Communications defended his outlet. He suggested that critics took issue with the outlet's attempt at inclusivity. There you go.
Inclusivity.
Inclusivity. So by not isolating the anatomical phenomenon of the cervix to just women, CNN is showing how inclusive it is, how much attention it plays to inclusivity.
They got rid of the membership dues.
Yeah.
Everyone can join.
Yes. So inclusivity here is a synonym for woke. Now, I probably ought to send this article down to James W. Moylan, so he could include these categories in his hate crime bill. Include it right in there with nerds and the other protected groups, individuals with cervixes, individuals without cervixes. Imagine, and then here's a quote, imagine feeling so threatened by inclusivity that you're compelled to write a story bashing another organization for practicing it. CNN's Matt Dornick tweeted. I feel really intimidated by inclusivity. I really do. By calling a woman and a man, as opposed to describing them by the presence or absence of the cervix, I am not inclusive at all. That's really bad. Some, including those trans exclusionary radical feminists, now there's a new group, TERFs, TERFs. Some, including those dubbed trans exclusionary radical feminists, or TERFs, have complained that ideas like the one pushed by CNN erase or denigrate womanhood. Yeah. So the women want you to know that they're the only ones that can have cervixes. And when you start saying that others could have cervixes, the TERFs, the trans exclusionary radical feminists, don't like it. In June, author J.K. Rowling wrote, as many women have said before me, quote, woman, close quote, is not a costume. Woman is not an idea in a man. Oh, this is radical stuff. She's the one that wrote Harry Potter. It just shows you she's got a really good imagination. Otherwise, she couldn't think of this stuff. Woman is not an idea in a man's head. Woman is not a pink brain, a liking for Jimmy Choos, or any of the other sexist ideas now somehow touted as progressive. Well, when it comes ideas touted as progressive, this isn't even the silliest one. It's completely silly, but they've got some that are even more silly than this. Hello, progressives. Moreover, the inclusive language that calls female people menstruators and people with vulvas strikes women, many women, as dehumanizing and demeaning. This wasn't the first time CNN appeared to shun plain phrasing for political reasons. The outlet previously received criticism for using the phrase fetus that was born.
Wow.
Fetus that was born. You know, like my neighbor's daughter the other day, she's going to have a fetus that was born shower next week instead of a baby shower.
I celebrated the anniversary of my fetushood 3 weeks ago, Bob.
Good for you. Happy fetushood.
49 years of being a fetus that has been born.
Very good, Jose. All the happiness to you.
Without a cervix.
And you were born without a cervix. Amazing. The outlet previously received criticism for using the phrase, quote, fetus that was born while discussing protections for infants who survived abortions. They don't have any trouble with that word at all. Okay, so, and I got into this when I was talking about a female's, as you were, a court of appeals holding that the men-only draft is not unconstitutional, but trying to be politically correct, I described it as the Court of Appeals holding that not requiring people with cervixes to register for the draft is not unconstitutional. And I didn't explain it very clearly to the real Joe Cruz, so I thought I'd better bring it back. It's such important information. Okay, next I've got him versus them. And this is something that I picked up from a website called The Daily Signal. And it's titled, Fired for Calling Transgender She, Teacher Goes to Court. Him versus them. Peter Vlaming has two great passions, teaching and French. Sounds like one of our callers, right? Frenchie, I hope you're listening. But Virginia's school district stripped the French teacher of the ability to impart these passions in high school classrooms when it fired him for not using pronouns preferred by a transgender student. Quote, I explained to my principal that I couldn't in good conscience pronounce masculine pronouns to refer to a girl. Well, this is really radical stuff. Vlaming told the Daily Signal in an interview for his special video report, quote, he gave me an official written reprimand that said it was the first step in a process that would lead to my termination. 19 days before Christmas 2018, the school board in West Point, Virginia, voted unanimously to fire Vlaming. Today, he awaits his day in court. Wyatt Peterson, at the time a student of Vlaming's, said his reaction to his teacher's firing was a combination of shock and disgust. Peterson helped organize a student walkout and protest. Let's see here. Yeah, let's take a break here, and then we'll come back for the home stretch with Peter Vlaming.
Top End Pest Control Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified, serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, heading down the home stretch on Tall Tales. I just peeked at my Facebook post here and saw something that was kind of interesting from Janice Wong, who, by the way, is ordinarily the first one to sign in, James Howard. Janice goes back to the Tom Fisher story and says, what if they've communicated on an old rotary dial phone and a three-way party line, and three-way party lined everyone? Well, an interesting question, Janice, but the Sunshine Law goes to public documents. And a document can be a flash drive or a CD-ROM, or now we know a WhatsApp transmission, etc. But if people talk on the telephone and there's no record made of what they said, then it would not be discoverable with the Sunshine Law request. Something maybe to think about a little bit, but that's the state of the law right now. Okay, I'm going back here to Paul Nichols, a friend of Laming's who was a superintendent of another county school, said that the teacher's situation is a direct reflection on what is happening in society, and that's for sure. And this is what Nichols said: not only did Laming lose his job, but I think the whole thing has put other people in a position where they're scared that they will lose their job if they don't toe the line of the popular culture, the progressive culture. And here's Vlaming's story. Vlaming said he taught French for 7 years at West Point High School. Near the end of the 2018 school year, one of his students, a 14-year-old girl, gave Vlaming a handwritten letter saying that she was transgender, had adopted a masculine surname, and wanted to use it in French class. The West Point board voted 5-0 on December 6th to fire Vlaming, saying his refusal to follow orders to use male pronouns and referring to the transgender student harassed and discriminated against the student and meant Vlaming was insubordinate. Well, in other words, when he referred to this girl, he was referring to the girl as he, him, and his. Now, we know the answer to that one right here in Tall Tales, don't we? What should he have used?
They, them, theirs.
Of course. How much easier could it be? Yeah. The only place he'd ever run into trouble using they, them, and theirs would be if he happened to call Tall Tales.
Then could he have said, hey, you, without the cervix?
Yeah, I guess he could have. Yeah, well, but no, wait a minute. She does. That boy did have a cervix.
Ah.
So the person was a girl.
Ah. Okay.
But she wrote a letter saying she was transgender and had adopted a masculine name. Okay, so she does. She does have a cervix.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. In an interview with the Daily Signal, Flaming said he had worked to help the student while staying true to his own conscience. What an antiquated concept that is, a conscience.
How dare he?
Yeah. I wasn't using female pronouns to refer to her because I didn't want to provoke her, Flaming said. I understood her point of view and respected the fact she could choose to think what she wants to think. And it's not my place as a teacher to pronounce any position I might have on the subject. But I couldn't in good conscience designate her third-person pronouns as a boy. Yeah, now, I think most of us grew up with something like a conscience. And one of the things that our conscience always told us was, you shouldn't lie. No matter what the situation, you shouldn't tell a lie. Even George Washington fessed up on chopping down the cherry tree, right? So it's a matter of conscience that, sometimes we even have discussions amongst ourselves about little white lies. Well, a little white lie is still a lie. And it's not right to tell a lie. Yeah. So Fleming said his conscience wouldn't let him use a masculine pronoun when referring to this person with a cervix. And I can understand that because it would be a lie. And I've kind of gotten into this myself here. I really object to the government or society or anybody else forcing me to pretend. If I want to pretend, I'll talk about Goldilocks and the Three Bears or something like that. But I don't want anyone to force me to pretend. The student met with Fleming on October 22, 2018, and told him she had heard that he had referred to her as a girl outside class. Horror of horrors. Flaming said he told the student that he appreciated her as a student, was glad she was in French class, and although he wasn't supposed to disclose this, that she was one of his favorite students and he appreciated her charm and wit. He told the student that adopting the new idea was a big transition. So extend me a little bit of grace, Fleming said. He told the student. We left that meeting and she was satisfied, and she told her mother as much. Now, what do you suppose her mother was? A person with or without a cervix?
Historically, it would have to have been one with a cervix.
Yeah, but we're rewriting history now in this woke era of progressivism. We're tearing down statues and we're rewriting history. So do you think that's still valid, Jose?
Unless she was adopted.
Okay.
Unless they were adopted.
Whether they were, that's better, yeah. Her mother confirmed that she was satisfied with their meeting, he said in the interview. The next day, Fleming said he went to speak to his assistant principal because the principal was out of town. He told them in detail about the conversation with the student, said he respected the student's decision to adopt a new identity. Fleming said he also told the assistant principal that he respected the right of the student's family to believe in her transition, but he could not in good conscience refer to a girl as a boy. I know there's a lot of suspense here, but we've come to the end of the program. Such an issue. This guy gets fired for not referring to a girl as a boy. Woke times we live in. Okay, see you tomorrow. Adios.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Formally nominated on Jack Callahan, Fox News, the Democratic National Convention has nominated its candidate for president.
I'm pleased to announce that Vice President Joe